Hello my friends, in this video we're gonna speak about frontline updates and not only, but this is the very important event that happened in Russia yesterday. Ukraine hit probably the most important facility for the last few months, or this year especially. On your screens you may see Kalykina oil pumping and mixing station, which is located in Tatarstan, 1,100 kilometers away from Ukrainian border. This one is crucially important for the Russian oil export, and as you might see, it is no longer operational. There were several of the strikes on territory. Allegedly, Ukraine used long-range missiles. Fire continues there even now. And not just those oil reservoirs on fire, but also the sensitive equipment of the pumping station was hit. And it will not work for at least several more months. And here we have the drone image of Kalykina station itself. I took it from Sternenko Volunteer. The facility is really huge, and even though it's kind of far away from Europe, but it is integrated into Druzhba pipeline. Druzhba, which is used to supply oil to Hungary, Slovakia and Belarus. Also before to Ukraine, but after the war had started, Druzhba pipeline is not working for Ukraine any longer. Moreover, Russians themselves hit Druzhba pipeline on Ukrainian territory, while Ukraine also strikes Druzhba on the Russian side. And this is one more strike on this pumping station. It is like the response to Fico and Hungarian temporary leader Orban that blackmailing Ukraine will not work for them because they are calling Ukraine to repair pipeline, to restore supplements of the Russian oil somehow. But instead, some of the Ukrainian missiles, allegedly missiles, so those could be drones, we are now not sure about what particularly hit this facility. Well, anyways, Ukraine responds to those threats coming from neighbors from the West, Hungary and Slovakia, crazy neighbors, for now, temporary. Because with the future elections, everything will change, so the facility here is new. They use good equipment and everything. This is the report, by the way, from the Russian media. 5 pumping stations, a very capable facility, which is responsible for nearly 40% of the Russian oil export. Just imagine. Well, some sources say 30, some say 40, so something between, 30 and 40. This is crazy amount of the oil. It is not just the pumping station, but as I mentioned you, a mixing one. The heavy oil from Bashkortostan and Tatarstan is mixing here with the light oil coming from Siberia to feed the requirements of European countries. And this mixed oil later on goes to the Druzhba pipeline later on. So now there is no pressure and the reservoirs are being damaged, and some of them probably destroyed, as you saw in the video. And here's the satellite image for you to understand the perspective of this enterprise. As we know, Ukraine hits Ilyinsky refinery and many others, but this is uncomparable. This is responsible for the Russian oil export, which was hit, and it's a first strike on this one. And Ukraine shows that it is capable to reach it 1,100 kilometers away from Ukraine, and it's not the limit. Ukraine will launch more of the things there to really demolish this important enterprise. But even from the first strike, we see that it's not good. It's not going well for Russians, for the Russian oil, not just refineries, but for oil crucial export of Russia. That's the special military operation, and it is ongoing far away from Ukraine. You experience the circumstances and your economy will suffer more. Not just Russia has lost this oil export for some time by the time they need to repair this facility, but also they have to find some of the spare parts. You know, the equipment which is being used there, it is mainly produced in Western countries. And Russia is under the sanctions, so it might take them quite a while to obtain those spare parts via the third countries as they usually do. And for that period of time, a great part of the Russian oil export will not be fulfilled as before. And Slovakia and Hungary, probably they're already mad about this Ukrainian action, but them. I mean, not the citizens of those countries, of course, but their governments. And yeah, the strike happened the last night. Many Russians filmed this fantastic phenomenon. It's called payback or revenge for their special military operation. It shows that Ukraine is very, very capable. Who would have thought from those Russians back in 2022, actually, 4 years ago? Yeah, tomorrow it's going to be a war start anniversary. Not the war itself, but the full-scale aggression of Russia, which is the part of the war that has been started in 2014 from occupation of Crimea. And those Russians, I'm sure they were cheerful, or at least they were not saying no to this war. Yeah, it's the general problem of the Russian population that they accept everything and they still mostly support Putin. Well, Russians enjoy because it may definitely backfire literally from what you see on your window, and it doesn't correspond, from what you see on your TV screens. Or I guess just right now while I'm filming this video, have an official information coming and also confirmed by the Russian side that this Druzhba pipeline facility, the pumping station Kalekino, is no longer operational. And Russian side doesn't specify that they will restore its operation because it was significantly damaged. That is what we saw on those multiple of the videos coming from the place. Fantastic job by Ukrainian army, absolutely great, and Russia is suffering. Russian budget. Kinetic sanctions are working, and I would say that they're one of the most effective. Well, not just this enterprise was used to pump the oil towards Slovakia and Hungary via Druzhba pipeline, but it was also pumping the oil to Ust-Luga, Primorsk Krai, to refuel Russian oil tankers and the tankers of the Russian shadow oil fleet, which go through the Baltic Sea to export, and also it was pumping the oil towards Novorossiysk for the same purpose, to refuel Russian oil tankers. This is the best spot to harm Russian oil logistics, Russian oil export. So definitely I would call it maybe even the most sensitive strike on the Russian oil infrastructure since the start of the war. That is how important this facility really is for the Russian oil export. My thanks to the channel Supernova Plus for sharing the Kaboom videos happening in Russia regularly. And I take those videos for my content, so sometimes I support this channel. So I just want to shout out, they're making fantastic job. Plus, I follow the channel Excelenova Plus, they share the similar kind of the information. I don't know, maybe they're competitors between each other, but I use their channels as the source to get the actual data because they're very fast in publishing the visual information and confirmation of what is happening out there. So thank you guys if you watch me. My content is also partially possible because of you, because you share this video information and I also share it on my channel. My friends, an important announcement here on my channel. Please press your like. Just right now while you're watching my video, there is a thumb up below. Press it. It will help me a lot to propel video in algorithms. And also subscribe while you're watching also. Subscribe, it's for free. Just for the last week, we gained 10,000 of new subscribers. Just imagine this number, 10,000. Just imagine those people. It's like 1/4 of the big stadium. Crazy amount of people. And we are getting to 1 million of subscribers. Well, it doesn't mean that 1 million people are regularly watching me, but 300,000, 400,000, I think they're in this circle. They're locked on what we do here. I mean, we, not just me, because without you, I'm literally no one. So thank you guys a lot for your awesome support, and separate thanks for my Patreon supporters and members of the channel who are making this content possible. Thank you guys so much. And the link for my Patreon is in the video description just below. Let's continue. Let's continue with other long-range strikes on Russian infrastructure. This is the Veliki Luki oil storage facility. The enterprise is located in Pskov region of Russia, which is quite far away from Ukraine, but this time to the north. And here we have a new satellite image showing devastations happened to several of the oil storage tanks. And it was not just the oil storage, but Russia stored diesel fuel in the same one. Well, still it's kind of hard to say of how many oil tanks were lost, but Russian firefighters tried to eliminate the fire for 2 days consecutive. Finally, they made it happen, but the result is just demolishment of this one, and for sure the enterprise is no longer operational for extensive period of time. Ukraine did it for one single strike with a few drones. Ukraine also hit a gas processing plant in Neftygorsk. Several of the critical components of the station were flat-lined, and you may see those images from satellites right away on your screens. The facility is no longer operational. Not just oil, but also Russian gas infrastructure is being damaged. So Ukraine managed to upscale the production of long-range drones, plus managed to make FP5 missiles more capable, Flamingo missiles. They were not precise before, they were very visible for the Russian radars. Well, they are, but it seems like Ukraine sends those now in unpredictable trajectory to bypass Russian air defense, and Russia itself, it lost lots of the air defense on occupied territory in Crimea, in Rostov-on-Don, in bordering regions of Ukraine, in Belgorod Oblast. So the capabilities of Russia to shut down Ukrainian drones, Ukrainian missiles, well, they're just lower than before. And Russia concentrates most of its air defense to protect Moscow. Yesterday on my stream, and I have another channel, I also have Twitch. Guys, please follow me there as well, because I stream there every day, almost every day. So I was asked the question of why Ukraine is not hurting Moscow city itself, its power grid, power stations, substations, whatsoever. Well, the answer is that it will not hurt Russian economy that much as, for example, the strikes on Russian even refineries, Russian mixing and pumping oil stations, gas stations, and military infrastructure. And as we know from the history of wars, and this war especially, like, for example, Russia strikes Ukraine, energy, it doesn't really resolve the problem for Russia. Then Ukrainians stay without power, without heat. They still do not support Russia. They do not support Putin. It is useless. So it's important to hurt Russian economy, but not to cause Russians to unite against the external threat. That is what Russian propaganda says, by the way. It will not bring any sort of the benefits for Ukraine itself. Those strikes are not just useless, they're harmful for Ukraine. Because in this case, for Russian propaganda, it will be easier to explain for Russians that Ukraine is bad. Well, still most people in Russia, they're already poisoned by this Russian propaganda, but in Moscow, I would say they're more cosmopolitan or liberal, you may say, compared to the people who live outside in the smaller cities, even though their economy state is way lower than in Moscow. Plus, of course, Russian air defense, so the strikes on Moscow energy grid will not be that effective. Absolutely, most of the missiles, drones are being shut down. Yes. And now let's review the situation on the front lines. We have some of the news, some of the updates also from the Russian side. Russian military blogger Romanov, who is the biggest one of the biggest in Russia, says that several settlements in the Kramatorsk district, and that's the eastern front lines, Donetsk Oblast, are not fully under Russian control, despite official reports from the Russian military command. According to his statement, Ukrainian forces remain in parts of Sofiivka, Toretsk, Mirnograd, and Chasiv Yar. I'm shocked actually about Toretsk that he says like that. He also states that Novopavlivka and Pavlivka are fully under Ukrainian control. For some, the price of lie, for others, bonuses and awards, he added. Well, that's kind of the interesting statement, I would say, my friends, because Toretsk is already for a long time in a red zone, but he says that there is the presence of Ukrainian army. Well, for Chasiv Yar, I may agree, because some of the streets are in the gray zone. Mirnograd, well, maybe. So the front line you see on those military maps, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Russian military map or Ukrainian one, they're already blurred by several of the kilometers, so you never know who controls those settlements or who has partial control of the settlements, who sends some of the infiltration attack, who is using the drones to target enemy supplies whatsoever. So everything is a huge gray zone. There is no precise line ongoing. And if there is the presence of the Russian army in Pokrovsk, for example, they're hiding in the buildings, in the basements, and everywhere. And just occasionally, using bad weather conditions, they advance, or during the nighttime they advance with the small infantry groups. That's how they propel. But with these tactics, it's impossible for Russia to occupy the entire Donetsk region in a close-by perspective. They will have to wait several of the years for this mission, and Putin is not getting younger, I would say. Alright, finally, Ukrainian command confirmed the massive counteroffensive operation on the front lines for the first time. Before, they were saying about some tactical things, but today Syrskyi say that Ukraine regained 400 square kilometers in southern offensive. That's great, and that's the biggest Ukrainian army success in territorial gains since 2023. And vice versa, this month is the worst one for Russia, at least for the last year, in territorial gains. It doesn't mean that Ukraine goes on full-scale offensive like it was in 2023, but definitely Russia is forced to retreat its soldiers from multiple of the directions, especially in Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk, where it's confirmed that Ukraine also liberated 2 more villages as for today. Also, Mykhovsk also published the update of his military map, where Vishneva is confirmed to be under full Ukrainian control, while also the fight is ongoing for Kalinovsk. According to my information, Russia has already withdrawn the forces from this one, and Berezova is the next target for Ukraine, as well as Zlahoda. If Ukrainian army, well, it depends on Ukrainian success in the Dobrapilla direction. There is the presence of Ukrainian infantry in that place. Here Ukraine tries to concentrate the forces for the further strike deeper into the Russian-controlled territory.
Слава Україні! Вот населений пункт Терновате.
Yeah, that's the report of our guys straight from Chernovata. That's the name of the village that was recently liberated. Russian officials continue to say that they're keeping control over this one, but it's the biggest settlement in this entire place. And it's the crossroad, so it was important for Ukraine to counterattack in this direction. Well, Russians went there before with infantry forces, some of the small groups, but Ukrainian soldiers kicked them out completely from Ternovate. Fantastic job, and our guys from 225th, they're just awesome. They're very capable. I would say that they were sent there from Pokrov's direction as the fire brigades to stop Russian advancement from Gulai-Pole. They're also effective in Gulai-Pole itself. They're using lots of the drones to stop Russian attacks, and in Ternovate also they're fantastic. Ukraine continued to push Russians on the front lines, gaining advantage. But you know what? Russians are sending their reserves, some of the special army that they were holding for a very, very long time, and decided to unleash all of the Russian army potential. Let me show you those beasts. They're more capable than Russian Spetsnaz. Just look at them. Yeah.
Все, стоп, давай, оружие в сторону противника. Кричи, держу. Держу.
Yeah, this Russian instructor is filming vertical horizontal video. I'm very sorry for it, but it's understandable, yeah? Russians are using Crunch battalions. For now, they're on occupied territory. They were decommissioned before, but later on were called to join Russian army once again, and they cannot say no. The only variant for those Russian soldiers is to get lost somewhere in Russia or try to escape abroad, but their data is in the system already, so officially they cannot leave Russia. So it was definitely a mistake for those guys to sign the contract with the Russian army first of all. Oh, finally, it's the vertical, at least initially. Crazy. Guys, it has never been like this in entire, not just Russian history, but in histories of every war. Even during the Second World War, if soldier got wounded, he is decommissioned, because there are many more people who are even willing to fight for the motherland, fatherland, whatsoever. But now, because not many people are signing contracts with the Russian army, and because Russia is unable to compensate the losses for them on the front lines, they take absolutely everyone, including those people who were wounded, even sometimes without limbs. They continue to send those to the front lines. And this is an elder, he is not young here, for sure. And he's been wounded, and he carries lots of the gear, rifle. This is crazy. This is humiliation. What the hell is happening in Russia? If before those cases were just occasional, now they're happening everywhere. It's disgusting, but Russians, they still go, they take those rifles, and they're like zombies. I would hide if I was Russian in this state. I would go somewhere to the village. I don't know, block myself in the house, but they understand it's going to be the final ticket for them in this life. They have absolute zero chances for survival with their reduced mobility. They're pretty much good targets for any sort of the drone operator. So what are they thinking about? I don't understand it. I would say that it is even better to go to the prison than to Russian army. And also those guys who are coming from Africa, from India, from Nepal, from like, what's the use? Why are you there? Why you signed the... Come on. Well, maybe that's the use of my channel as well, because some of the people who live in those countries, they might see the truthful information, what might happen to them. And this is filmed by Ukrainian drone. And this is the last moment of this guy. So why? It's better to stay in your country and to continue to live your life, whatever it is, like poor or not poor, doesn't matter. But if you go to Russia, that's the end of the game. Game over. And you will not need money any longer. And for some people, it's still not understandable. This Russian soldier has decided to go to the front lines once again. He used to fight in Ukraine, as he says, since 2014. He went to so-called Luhansk People's Republic, basically Luhansk Oblast of Ukraine, to reinforce local separatists. And he survived somehow back then. And here it is, the dinner, the celebration of him to go back to war. Here he says with some of the slur that they're gonna take Odessa, they're gonna take Kiev and everything. We're gonna take Kiev, yeah, we're gonna take everything. And vodka once again. This is the luxury dinner they have. This Alko warrior has so many medals, oh my god.
A few moments later.
This placard says, "Forever glory to Russian hero, Imaev Roald Zinurovich." Kind of the not fully Russian name, I would say. Probably his daughter, I think, also wearing some of the military uniform. She says, "I'm gonna go to the square to put one more placard." So the guy was flatlined in Ukraine. He wasn't capable to occupy Kiev as he promised. Yeah, shit happens. There are the dates 1974. Really? I thought that he was born in 50s or something, the way he looked. Till 2026. That's the fresh one. So that's the classical Russian conscript. Some of the ex-prisoner, alcoholic, drug addict, people who also get lots of the loans in the banks. Their bargains might be forgiven for them if they join the Russian army. They might join also from the Russian prison straight away. Yes, and they might become heroes of Russia. That's what they're told about by Russian propaganda. But at the same time, those guys, they're not that capable. Just imagine infiltration attacks. It's cold. They need to carry lots of the gear. They need to walk several of the kilometers, several of the days. And look at this guy. He's not capable to do it. With the new Russian tactics, they need younger people, way younger, students. And Russia has started a massive campaign to hire students to join Russian army from colleges, universities, from everywhere. They tell, we're gonna pay you 5 million rubles, 5 million, and you'll become a drone operator. But it's a bullshit. The Russian youth understand that it's not okay, so they usually do not join. Definitely now Russia tries to mobilize their men without announcing a new full-scale mobilization, but it is not working. They cannot compensate their losses, and for this reason I still think that the full-scale mobilization is imminent for the Russian army. If Russian men are not in desperate, they usually do not go to the war, especially young people, because they project their life, they have their plans, they do not live from one vodka bottle to another vodka bottle. No, for them to join the Russian army, it's not the variant. And also they're in internet, they follow some of the Telegram groups. Even if they follow Russian groups, they understand the real picture. Because the Russian military bloggers, they're saying about corruption in the Russian army, they're saying about lies from Gerasimov, from Putin, that it's complete rotted down system, and they're not willing to sacrifice their lives for basically nothing. And 5 million rubles for the drone operator, yeah. Career versus their life, it doesn't match. It's very, very low, so no, it will not work for Putin. In this case, the only variant for Russian regime to maintain the current status quo to propel forward is to announce a mobilization. That is why I think they're blocking Telegram and other social media in Russia. Because it was an internet the last time that helped Russians to coordinate efforts to leave Russia or not to get mobilized in 2022. Now there will be no this tool. And Russia may have many more army men, but the quality of those, I mean morale and everything, will be even lower than for this guy. Latvia. Thank you so much, Latvian people, you're awesome. So Ukraine to receive full thermal power plant from Latvia to restore energy system. By the time Slovakia threatens Ukraine to cut electricity, Hungary as well. Oh, everything is bad about Ukraine, it's our enemy. Latvia, you're the best. Come on, I don't have even words to say how good you are. Thank you guys for supplying Ukraine with full energy coming from this power station. And of course, it will compensate some of the energy loss for Ukraine in case Slovakia and Hungary go to full crazy mode. Latvians, the greatest people. Yeah, guys, as well as many others, people of the free world, people who support democracy, people who are against the Russian invasion of Ukraine, who support Ukraine. Guys, you're awesome everywhere you are. By the way, also in Hungary and in Slovakia, you just have crazy regimes, but it's just, as I say to you, temporary. I think in April we'll see Orban for the last time in Hungarian politics and everything will be all right. Right, guys, thank you so much for watching me and thanks for your kind support on Patreon and also membership of the channel. The link for my Patreon is in the video description below. With your support, you are making this content possible. I'm filming every day for you, for me, for everyone. And if you don't have this opportunity to support me in that way, you may just press like to this video and subscribe for the channel. It's for free and it really helps to boost this content in algorithms. Thank you guys. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.